Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick2 and today I'm going to be showing you guys what I believe to be the best anomaly power Technomancer build in the entire game that even after the nerf still completely melts everything, not only killing the final arbiter in just a few seconds, but also clearing maps incredibly easily and very quickly. The build isn't as broken as it used to be with all the nerfs that happened recently, but it's still one of the strongest builds in the entire game, and as you can see the damage is still really good regardless. It's also really nice to finally use something different for once in terms of skills. We now actually get to use the Tools of Destruction skill, which is surprisingly way more fun than I thought it was going to be. Being able to just whip out the minigun and absolutely melt through everything while also whipping out the rocket launcher, just one-shotting elites is a lot of fun, and it adds a lot of spice to the build. But overall, the build is super simple to set up, really easy to play with like a crazy amount of survivability, and obviously the damage is just incredibly strong. Really hope you guys enjoy the build, and let's just get into it. Before we get into it, I would like to thank today's sponsor for helping support me so I can continue to make content for a living. That sponsor is Deving. If you feel like you're struggling with certain expeditions, maybe you're having a hard time making the perfect build, or maybe you just don't have enough time to level that third character, Deving.net has you covered. They offer boosts for not only Outriders, but also all kinds of other games such as Division 2 and Destiny 2. With Deving, you can choose to get help with anything you're currently having trouble with, so if you need that perfect build, maybe you just want to get up to CT15, whatever it is, you can easily do that on the site. The way that the boost works is through account sharing, so they do everything for you without any use of cheats or any bug abuse, so you can 100% trust that they get the job done legitimately, and with over 20,000 reviews and a 4.9 score on Trustpilot, you can completely trust that you're getting your money's worth. If you're interested, feel free to check the link in the description and make sure to use code NICK2 for 15% off on any purchase, and if you have any questions, you can always just contact an operator on the site to be able to help you out. That said, thanks to Deving for sponsoring the video and helping make sure that I can do this for a living, and let's just get right into the video. Let's just get into it. So first off, taking a look at the skills. So we're going to be using Cryo Turret. The main premise of this build is basically, it's kind of like the same turret techno build that we used to be using, but instead of having a second turret, we're going to be using Tools of Destruction. The reason that this is really good is because the Blighted Turret doesn't really provide all that much damage for us. It doesn't really do anything. We kind of only used the Blighted Turret before just to stack up our Technomancer stacks with our gear set just to get the extra damage more quickly, but we can get that anyway just by using the Cryo Turret. And also the Blighted Turret used to benefit from the Pax Node lethal devices, which actually recently got nerfed and does significantly less damage than it used to. So using Blighted Turret isn't really necessary anymore, and instead we get to use Tools of Destruction, which actually scales off of our status power. So we get a lot of status power, and then we're able to either use the rocket for very quick elite killing, or we can just use the minigun for tearing through the entire map, which is really fun, while also just completely melting bosses. So this really helps for just a lot of different reasons. It's also just way more fun to use than just, you know, mindlessly throwing the turrets down. Way more interactive, way more enjoyable to play with, and that is the main reason that we're using that instead of Blighted Turret. And then Cold Snap is here literally just for the ad clear. If you wanted to do faster boss killing, you could pretty easily swap off Cold Snap for Blighted Turret to, you know, stack up Technomancer quicker and proc some lethal devices, or you could use like blighted rounds or whatever. But Cold Snap is like our main AoE. You know, you pop it down, everything gets frozen. Kill one guy with Icicle Storm, everything, you know, the entire map blows up. So Cold Snap pretty mandatory for the ad clear, but if you're only focusing on bosses, you could very easily get away without Cold Snap. Cryo Turret obviously just does a crazy amount of damage because we're using a whole bunch of mods for it, so obviously that's why we are using Cryo Turret. When it comes to the class tree, this is how we have it set up. I would recommend to pretty much just copy paste this. The only thing that I could see maybe being better would be swapping disturbance coding for marked for execution. Tried it and I didn't notice a significant deal of difference. The only thing, like marked for execution might be slightly better for mobbing, while getting the resistance piercing is helpful for bossing because the bosses have a lot of resistance, and we're also converting this into more anomaly power. Either way, pretty minimal difference here. Nothing you really need to worry about all that much. We're applying vulnerable with freeze, and we're going to be, you know, using Cryo Turret and Cold Snap, so we're going to be applying freeze all the time, and everything else is pretty standard, pretty cookie cutter, nothing that you really care to change about this. One thing that I guess is worth noting is that every time we activate a gadget skill, we're going to increase our AP by 40%, which pairs very nicely when using both Cryo Turret and Cold Snap, so you can pretty much have 100% uptime on this extra anomaly power. And when it comes to the Pax Tree, pretty standard stuff here. Initial Striker for extra anomaly power, lethal devices for extra AP, and also inflicting toxic with pretty much every skill that we're going to be using. So this is really nice because then we can take advantage of toxic multipliers, which is pretty cool. Then we have Painkiller for some health regen, which, oh my god, they nerfed the crap out of this. I didn't whatever, it doesn't really matter. Painkiller's kind of bad. And then instead of going permanence and dissection like we used to, we're actually going break their ranks, which is pretty useless. Don't really care about that, but we're getting depleted core, where our ordnance skills, namely our tools of destruction, scales off of 100% of our status power. So similar to phaser beam or pyromancer, well, phaser beam scales off 210%, so not entirely comparable, but basically we're getting a whole bunch of extra damage with our RPG or minigun just by stacking a lot of status power, which we're going to be doing anyway with the build, because status power is also going to benefit our cryo turret. So this is a very, very good synergy here, and honestly, dissection and permanence didn't really give you all that much damage in the first place, so this is really, really nice. When it comes to the weapons, you don't really have to worry about it that much. Honestly, I would just get any weapon that has status power on it and then try to get like a damaging mod. I run around with the Thunderbird because it's really nice to have ultimate storm whip. You pretty much just pop down your cold snap, shoot one guy, he blows up, and then everything blows up with icicle storm, and ultimate storm whip will kill that guy pretty quickly, which is really nice. But the Air to the Desert is also really good. I don't really use this because I don't have a good roll of it, but just on my character screen, just so you guys know that there's another option. The most important thing is getting status power, because that's going to scale your cryo turret and your minigun. And then the second most important mod is Fortress, because it's going to give you 25% extra damage. And then we have Mage's Rage, of course, which still gives you a fairly decent amount of AP, nowhere near as broken as it used to be. And I'll keep saying this over and over again. This is the main reason that the build doesn't do as much damage as it used to, because Mage's Rage was like scaling everything completely out of control. But it still is a nice AP gain, and there's not really much else you could use. You could use something to do flat damage if you wanted to use like T2 and T3 Storm Whip or something, or like Dimensional Rockets or something. I don't know, but ultimately getting the AP is more valuable so that you can do more damage with your turrets and with your tools of destruction. Definitely just make sure that you get status power. Getting Armor Pierce doesn't really matter, because we don't have space for no resistance against the fortified with this build. There is a way you could set it up with no resistance against the fortified, and then Air to the Desert would be very good because it has armor piercing, and then you convert that into more resistance piercing, which is still a good option. I just don't currently have that on my build, which I consider to be kind of nearly best in slot, so just keep that in mind when you're taking a look at weapon options and different mod options. But ultimately, I think the Thunderbird is great, really nice to use, status power is sick, and the damage from Storm Whip is pretty good as well. When it comes to the gear that we're using, obviously we're going to be using 3 pieces of Techmonger, and you want to be using the helmet, the chest, and the pants. These all roll with AP and then status power. And then for your other 2 slots, you just want some purples with AP and status power, which of course we'll talk about. So let's just go over every single mod that we're using, and I'll go over some alternative options that you guys can use. So on the helmet, we have Double Trouble, which rolls innately, which is going to double the fire rate of your cryo turret. Not really much to say about this, just gives you a whole bunch of additional damage, really nice. And then Twins is nice so that you get a second cryo turret, so you have 2 cryo turrets at the same time. Pretty self-explanatory why you'd want to use these. Then we have Euthanizer to deal 16% more damage against toxic enemies, which is nice because we are applying toxic with lethal devices, so toxic is going to be active all the time. Then on the chest, I rolled Anomaly Echo for just flat extra AP, which is really good. Even though it's only 200k, it's still pretty good, especially because we're going to be scaling that up with the percentage in our percentage AP nodes in our skill tree, and also Mage's Rage gets a little value out of that as well. Increased damage is kind of a dead mod on the chest, but you don't really have another option, to be honest. So it kind of is what it is. 47k extra damage is literally nothing, so pretty bad mod. Then we have Captain Hunter to just increase our damage against elites. Pretty simple. And then for the pants, we have the Techmonger legs, obviously with improved coolant, going to double the fire rate of our cryo turret again. So we're getting a whole bunch of extra rate of fire with this, which is going to benefit how much damage it does, and also just really speeds up ad clear. And then we have Arms and Anomaly for just a huge amount of flat anomaly power. One of the better mods you can get with this build, because anomaly power obviously scales the damage of our skills, so that's really, really strong. Then we have Shatter to deal 16% more damage against enemies afflicted with freeze, which is very, very good. An alternative to this is Virulent Compound, although I think Shatter is a little bit better overall because it's more damage to everything, while Virulent Compound is just more damage to elites. But Virulent Compound is on its own multiplier, so it's just straight up 10%, while Shatter's 16%, and we already have 30% extra damage to frozen enemies within the skill tree, but still really good. Ultimately, I think Shatter is a little bit better, but take what you can get, honestly. And then when it comes to the gloves and the boots, these are insanely difficult to get because you want them to not only have good mods on them, but to be purple and to have anomaly power and status power. That's the main reason that this build took forever, is because it just took a whole bunch of vendor hunting. I'd recommend watching my video going over how to find very good purples. I'll leave a link to it in the description, but basically you just want to check the vendors constantly. And that's kind of the only way that you'll actually end up getting these rolls, because otherwise tier 3 mods in the Apocalypse slot is incredibly, incredibly rare on purples. Otherwise though, you could very easily just use like Borealis gloves or something. Borealis gloves or boots. I don't think they have status power though, actually, so maybe that is a bad recommendation. Maybe something like Techmonger gloves actually would be, yeah, this is a pretty good roll. And just use like Radical Therapy or something would actually not be all that bad, and probably would be a little bit easier to set up with the build. Not really sure what boots you could go for because you do really want that status power, but anyway, when it comes to the gloves, I have Long Winter on them, which is like the only T1 mod you could get to roll in the gloves, which is actually helpful, which is really good for our ad clear. It's going to increase the radius of our cold snap. If you're fighting bosses, you could easily swap this to something else, but because it's like the only good option on gloves, it's kind of just like hard stuck in the build. But I mean, it's pretty mandatory for ad clear and makes clearing maps very quick. And then Icicle Storm, obviously, anytime we kill an enemy that's frozen, they're going to explode. And that's kind of the main reason Cold Snap is very good for ad clear in the first place, because you kill one guy and then everybody just blows up. Then Power Simulation for a flat, huge amount of additional anomaly power. I could see a world where instead of Power Simulation here, I had like Arms and Anomaly on the gloves, and then instead of rolling Arms and Anomaly on my pants, I rolled No Resistance Against the Fortified. I think that would be a little bit better for bossing, but Power Simulation just gives you so much AP when you're mobbing because there's so many elites that are present on the battlefield or whatever, and you just get a lot of AP from this, so I still think that this is a really good option. And No Resistance Against the Fortified is only really good if you're able to get an armor piercing gun, which is very difficult in the first place. Then I have some good boots here. Again, AP status power is the main thing that you want to look out for. I have Toxic Piercer, but honestly, it's not really all that great. It just does a little bit of extra damage, which I guess is nice for the ad clear, but it doesn't do very much on the bosses. Your Toxic doesn't do a whole lot of damage, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. It's kind of the only mod you can really get on the boots, but you could also get some survivability stuff. Then we have Hail Shot, which is an absolutely mandatory, very good mod for the build. Just going to increase your cryo turret's damage based on your status power, which is why status power is so important. And then Unstoppable Force, just increase our AP based on our resistance piercing. We have a little bit of resistance piercing with this build. Unstoppable Force isn't crazy, but it's like the only good APOC mod that rolls on boots, so kind of forced into using it. It is what it is. One thing that I want to mention with this build is that one of the reasons that it does less damage than it used to isn't only Mage's Rage, but also status power got nerfed. So as you can see, I have 232% status power in my sheet right here, but if you were to add up all the status power I have 45% times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which would actually be 270% status power. So I'm losing about 40% status power, and the reason for that is it's actually based on my Apocalypse tier. So the higher that my Apocalypse tier goes, the more of a status power penalty that I'll actually end up incurring, and the higher that you go, it ends up getting really bad. And this is actually multiplicative loss, so the higher that you go, the way worse it gets, and you don't really compensate for it with your gear. So it's kind of bad, or it's really bad game design in my opinion, and I think it's a terrible thing that exists in the game. This did not used to happen when you played because it was actually bugged, so this penalty you wouldn't get at all prior to the recent update. But with the recent update, the higher Apocalypse tier you go, the more and more of that status power penalty is really going to hit the build, and that also is just going to nerf how much damage that your cryo turret and your Tools of Destruction does, because these heavily scale off of your status power. The cryo turret I think scales like 3 times of your status power, and the Tools of Destruction scales off of 100% of it. So just keep that in mind. But if you're lower Apocalypse tier, like 20 or something, the build will just completely decimate everything if you're able to get status power on most pieces. But as you can see at 33, which I don't think most people are going to be much higher than, you still do a whole bunch of extra damage, and that status power penalty doesn't really fully kick in yet. I'll leave a link to a Reddit post that goes over the math on how the status power penalty actually ends up happening, but basically higher Apocalypse tier, the worse and worse that the build will kind of get, and there's not really all that much that you can do about it. When it comes to how you actually want to play with the build, I mean, it's pretty simple. You just throw down your turrets, try to get them in a spot that is able to hit like all the enemies on the map. I wouldn't spam your turrets. That's something that you don't want to do, because every time that you throw them again, they're going to stop shooting. So I would make sure to just try to position them in a nice place, and then only reposition them when they're actually like unable to hit enemies or something like that. And then just cold snap whenever you're able to like clear a whole map. Shoot some enemies when you cold snap them to not only proc Fortress and Mage's Rage and Arms and Anomaly, but also to just, you know, hit them with the Storm Whip, hope that they blow up. Then anytime that you see elites or you just feel like it, you can just pop out your Tools of Destruction. I would just make sure to try to fire off your Tools of Destruction stuff pretty quickly, because while you're in your Tools of Destruction, you can't proc Arms and Anomaly, you can't proc a Fortress or Mage's Rage, so you don't want to sit in there for too long, because you'll end up losing a lot of your buffs, and then the damage that you're actually doing in your Tools of Destruction isn't going to be as good. But ultimately, it's very simple to play. I would just get more comfortable with it, make sure that you're landing those crits every once in a while, throw your turrets down whenever you feel like it, try to get used to positioning them well, and ultimately just watch your Cold Snap and Icicle Storm absolutely blow everything up. Alright, so when it comes to the bossing, similarly to the mobbing, I mean, this build is like super easy to play. You don't really need to know all that much about it, but I figured I may as well just show it again and just talk about it a little bit. So first off, you want to land your crits immediately. I've tried landing my crits after popping my cryo turret and my cold snap, which is what we used to do prior to the Mage's Rage fix or whatever. This doesn't really seem to benefit me more doing it afterward than before. I don't really notice a difference, I guess, is what I mean. So you can either land the crits first or land the crits second. I don't think it makes all that much of a difference. I went for it first here, and then I just throw down my cryo turrets in a spot that I think is actually going to hit the boss pretty easily, which is like right under his feet. Pop the cold snap for the extra anomaly power there. And then I just pop my minigun and just go to town, and he dies pretty near instantly. I whiffed a little bit there, but as you can see, the minigun just completely shreds him. If your build isn't as optimized, obviously you're not going to kill him as fast, and you'll rely a little bit more on the turrets. But ultimately, the boss killing is very good with this build, and this is the primary reason that I think it is one of the better Technomancer builds at the moment, because it has very good ad clear while also still being able to completely melt the Arbiter, and he has absolutely no chance of like going into his axe phase and actually killing you, right? If you were to do less damage with the build, I mean, obviously I have 70 bullets left in my minigun there, so all that would happen is he would just take another 10 seconds to kill or whatever. If he's taking a very long time because your build isn't like super optimized, I would potentially try dropping the minigun after maybe like 100 shots with it or something, so then you can proc your fortress and your Mage's Rage again, right? Because otherwise those buffs are actually going to run out. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, please make sure to drop a like, leave a comment down below letting me know what build you guys would like to see next. I'll probably do Trickster next, but not 100% sure. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys later. Peace.